I was starting with the stories. Negotiations on a hostage and ceasefire deal in Gaza appeared to be at an impasse, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu leaning towards expanded military operations and Hamas demanding the humanitarian situation be addressed before it returns to talks. Well, according to reports from international news outlets, Netanyahu will urge a meeting of the Security Cabinet on Tuesday to support the full conquest of the Strip. This information was got from Israeli media, described as accurate by a source familiar with the matter. The report was criticized by a group of mothers of Israeli soldiers, saying it will be fatal for both hostages and soldiers. The Palestinian Authority is calling on the international community to intervene. Meanwhile, the humanitarian situation in Gaza remains dire.
Convening his cabinet in the coming days, they're discussing various options that could mean new efforts at reaching a ceasefire deal, but they are also considering the possibility of even harsher military action that would push any hopes of a ceasefire deal even further into the distance. In the meantime, we see the same humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Health officials continue to report every day new deaths of people from hunger and malnutrition-related illnesses. Israel has been working with the international community to bring more aid, more food into Gaza.
And while Israel says it will allow controlled entry of goods into Gaza through local merchants under a new cabinet-approved mechanism aimed at increasing aid while limiting reliance on the UN and international agencies. Basic food, baby products, fruits, vegetables, and hygiene items are among approved supplies. The move comes amid worsening famine, with international concern rising over starving Palestinians and the condition of hostages still held by Hamas. Gaza reportedly needs 608 trucks daily to meet basic needs, similar to pre-war levels. Hamas said it's willing to coordinate with the Red Cross to deliver aid to hostages if Israel opens humanitarian corridors and halts airstrikes during distributions. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from London by the International Affairs Analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. Glad to have you join us, Marek. Netanyahu holds a security meeting today. Your expectations?
As far as one can tell, he has decided simply to escalate on and conquer the whole of the Gaza Strip. And that is the information that I have, and that which you relayed as well.
Yeah, just like you said, his intention is to urge a full-scale onslaught in Gaza. What with the humanitarian crisis there, what are world leaders saying about this, his latest statement to, carry out this full-scale onslaught in Gaza?
Well, the central problem he faces is that as things stand, the entire campaign has got, so to speak, nowhere. Hamas is still there, and after all, he pledged to destroy this thing. The Gazans are still there, and after all, he has sided to some degree with those calling for their expulsion. There's no sign that all the hostages will be returned. What has been achieved? On the negative side, it's scarcely impossible to exaggerate. Israel has succeeded in tarnishing its image to an almost extraordinary degree. It's now difficult to point out, but it has to be done all the time, that the Israelis, as Jews, suffered enormously under Nazi rule, because what we're seeing now is the Israelis inflicting a man-made famine on the Gazans. And this has really gone down very badly, with support for Israel having been greatly suffered. Moreover, the sheer level of destruction in Gaza, most of it appears to be unnecessary, let's say wanton, means, of course, that a huge rebuilding effort will have to be made. But the point about the signs of destructions are that, of course, again, it's not good for Israeli image. And we stress they haven't actually succeeded in any of their goals that they set themselves. And so, therefore, on the whole, it has to be said that what Netanyahu has a choice, but here he's now making a contradictory choice. On the one hand, he wants to increase the level of aid for Gazans, and as far as one can tell, all talk of them being expelled has gone. On the other, he's talking about increased military operation. Well, the two are kind of in conflict, and it's by no means clear this operation will actually result in anything useful for Israel, except, of course, they'll have full responsibility for any famine that might well occur. And it would appear that there is such a danger of a famine if they do not coordinate the aid better.
You talked about image. Does Netanyahu really care about his image? And then you also mentioned famine. Israel said it will allow controlled entry of goods into Gaza through local merchants under a new cabinet-approved mechanism aimed at increasing aid while limiting reliance on UN and international agencies. How do you evaluate that?
The real problem is that there is an element of contradiction here. Again, the UN agencies supply aid. The aid arrives at the frontier. If Israel wanted to, it could patrol this aid, make sure that nothing untoward happens to it. It is now Israel's responsibility. Instead of saying that what? There'll be trade. That's what it boils down to. They have the idea that there will be merchants in Gaza who can purchase the goods and sell them on. But the entire economy, the entire country is being leveled with the ground. And so it's very hard to see quite how this is going to function. And in any case, the trade will have to obviously be financially viable, and it's very hard to see quite how it's going to be financially viable for those supplying the goods to Gaza. So it would be more accurate, as far as one can see, that they'll be relying upon this American, somewhat hidden organization, and that the trade aspect will be limited, and that there will be some goods coming in by one means or another. So the danger of immediate famine, actually killing people, will be mitigated. But famine in the sense of weakening people, in the sense of raising their susceptibility to disease, because that's the one that's on the horizon, that hasn't gone and won't go, because as you said right at the beginning, it needs far more aid if that's to be avoided. 600 lorries, you were stating, per day. And that indeed is that sort of figure that I've come across as well. And that's just not being met.
What's the nexus, if there is any at all, between starving Palestinians who are suffering from this war and Hamas? Is that supposed to be what does he intend to achieve, starving Palestinians? And what's the nexus between starving them and Hamas?
Yeah, actually, that question is an interesting one, because indeed, starving the Palestinians is not an immediate, obvious impact on Hamas. If Hamas really are the people that Israel's saying that have been enriching themselves as a result of the aid program and don't care for the populace, all it's doing, therefore, is giving, first of all, the Palestinians an extremely unpleasant experience. And let us hope it doesn't get any worse, because, as I say, disease is always ready to strike. And tarnishing, as I've said, Israel's image. So the entire strategy, as far as one can tell in this sense, is wasted. There is, of course, the other aspect we haven't mentioned, namely that this is a way of, if you like, weakening the resolve of the Gazans to stay in Gaza, which comes back to this previous plan, which it appears at present not to be going ahead, of trying to encourage, open inverted commas, voluntary, close inverted commas, emigration. But there's no sign the Gazans are buckling under this. And all that's happening is they're becoming steadily more emaciated in their own country, without either Hamas being affected overmuch and without this plan of them being expelled or voluntary leaving being achieved. So it is one huge stalemate, as far as one can tell from that point of view.
The comments from France and UK on recognizing Palestine, how is it impacting Netanyahu's attitude to this war?
In my opinion, the Great Britain and France, having said they're prepared to recognize a Palestinian state, has had an influence. And as well, all the other countries, because there are a great many countries now prepared to recognize Palestine. One reason why aid, in my opinion, was started again by Netanyahu, and why there's no mention currently of the plan of voluntary immigration, is because of this diplomatic pressure. Please note, although Great Britain and France are no longer the military superpowers they were, that role is now taken by America. Diplomatically, they are very important, arguably as important as America in many ways, and that therefore this has forced Netanyahu's hand, and therefore he finds himself carrying out this contradictory policy, which I mentioned before, of simultaneously increasing the level of aid and expanding the war, which are, as a result, the former of Great Britain and France's pressure.
Do you see him wilting under pressure? I mean, Trump is not, he's not hidden that Trump for some time now is not happy with his attitude towards this war. Do you see?
Quite right.
Yeah. Do you see him wilting under the pressure, as it were, from the international community, including the US?
Yes. Netanyahu has undoubtedly increased the level of aid and changed his stance about trying to remove the Palestinians as a result of the diplomatic pressure by the entire international community, especially Great Britain and France recently. It has had the further effect of actually isolating America and Israel. It's not quite the world entirely against them, but certainly there are no immediate other allies who are coming to their aid. And this in turn has meant that Israel hinges to an extraordinary degree on America. It always has depended on her. But now, when Trump said horrible things are happening there and he's sending out Vitkov and so on, the point is that Netanyahu cannot afford Trump hiccuping in any respect because he hinges on them. And this effect of Great Britain and France, as well as the other nations, has meant, yes, Netanyahu is wilting.
All right, we'll leave it there. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, International Affairs Analyst in London there, chatting with me on Arise News. Thank you so much.